anyone in the West probably knew Ada, just like they knew Phoenix and, some of the other places that had rodeos. Ada was known for that.
Ultimately, we'd like to see it like it was in the 40s when they had the big parade and the Western Heritage Week and everything to go along with it.
I went to the rodeo this last year. It was a good rodeo. They had good stock, good cowboys, and that's what makes it good.
Author John Grisham once described Ada, Oklahoma as a place where the West meets the South. For more than 80 years and counting, rodeo competitors from around the country have gathered at the crossroads of Ada to battle for prize money and bragging rights. Ada's rich rodeo tradition began in earnest in 1935 with the local fire department.
At the fire station, they were talking one day and saying that they really needed something for August, have something going on in August because it was so hot and miserable and nothing happened. So they said, well, why don't we have a rodeo? So they got busy, and somebody said they knew where they could get some Brahmas, and someone else said, well, they could bring in their steers and they'd offer their cattle, and they just got together and did all these plans, and 3 weeks later they had a rodeo. They didn't make any money off the rodeo, but they didn't lose any either. So they thought that was a pretty good sign.
Just like that, the Ada Firemen's Rodeo was born. The timing couldn't have been better. In the midst of the Great Depression, residents were starved for cheap local entertainment. During this era, agriculture still occupied a preeminent position in rural economies like Ada's. Working cowboys were much more common then, and the spirit of the Old West, although fading, could more easily be found.
Ada, like any of the other little towns all over the West, would have little groups that would get together and rope. And in Ada, they would get together where East Central University now stands.
I lived in Norfolk, Nebraska, and I had a uncle that was on Shetland ponies. And he had sales up there at Nebraska, and David Schellenberger lived out here, come up there and clip ponies, and I told him that I wanted to be a bull rider. And I'd got on a few bulls and loved it. I was pretty young, and David Schellenberger said, if you want to learn to rodeo and ride bulls, he said, you come to Oklahoma.
To call the first years of the Ada Firemen's Rodeo sensational would be underselling it. A surprise crowd of thousands showed up for the first one in 1935, prompting a quick move from the old ballpark to the county fairgrounds. The next couple of years saw crowds double, then triple. More grandstands, chutes, and lights had to be added. By the end of the decade, crowds were starting to number in the tens of thousands. Stands were overflowing, and people were being turned away.
It grew into the second largest outdoor rodeo in the nation for years and years. They actually were the top outdoor rodeo in the nation for a 5-day rodeo one year.
They always scheduled it for the second week in August, right after Cheyenne. And Cheyenne was the big rodeo. They'd go to the Cheyenne rodeo and then just head to the Ada rodeo because they were getting closer to their home states. And because they put all the money back into it, prize money. And that way some of the big names would come on here. So that's what really kept them going. And of course they put everything back in. And Cheyenne would have already happened. So they knew what the Cheyenne purses were, and they would get donations and up theirs. There was one year it even surpassed the Cheyenne rodeo in purse and attendance.
The Ada Firemen's Rodeo continued to break attendance records in the early 1940s. A parade down Main Street became part of the festivities, and its pageantry would often draw as many spectators as the rodeo itself. For that one August weekend, Ada would explode off the map. Newspaper accounts of the day reported rodeo fans coming from every corner of the U.S. Oklahoma Governor Leon Phillips attended more than once while in office.
It was a community thing. People loved rodeo, and they loved parades. There wasn't a TV pulling them away. I can remember as a child, we weren't rodeo people, but we were sure never missed any of the parades. You thought about it all summer long. I remember having a little cowgirl costume that I would wear when we went. It became a social thing. The society page would be full of people coming to visit other families, and they would schedule their family reunions for rodeo week. And of course, people would go to the wagon yard, camp out, but it was a big thing. They took care of August quite well.
The Second World War put a damper on a lot of leisure activity across the country, including the Ada Firemen's Rodeo. Certainly there were more important matters at hand, but the rodeo soldiered on despite a dramatic drop in attendance and the fire department's inability to carry on with it because of civil defense duties. But local businesses and civic clubs stepped forward to keep it alive. After the war, the rodeo once again drew large crowds and the best cowboys to be found anywhere.
I met a bunch of boys that lived down here that rodeoed, and the first time that I made the rodeo, Chuck Smith and Hoot Gibson promoted it, and it was the Ada Rodeo, and that was at the fairgrounds. Rodeoed 38 years, but I just rode bulls for 15 years, and then I got big and just started steer wrestling. Really, in rodeo, youth is the best there is. When you're young, you got better reflexes. Your subconscious mind's got to tell your conscious mind to do something, and then you got to do it. You got to think it, sleep it, eat it. You got to want to do it in the worst way. That's what makes you become good.
In 1962, rodeo performer and promoter Ken Lance bought the rights to Ada's Rodeo, soon marking the end of a quarter-century run at the Pontotoc County Fairgrounds. But it was far from the end for the local rodeo. With ties to professional rodeo associations and famous entertainers, it would thrive for many decades to come, although on a smaller scale than that reached by the pre-war firemen's rodeos.
Ken Lance took the rodeo over and moved it south of Ada, and he turned it into a huge success out there. It had concerts, and there was a huge rodeo out there also.
And I went to every one that he had there, and of course it was called just the Ada Rodeo.
Ken Lance's rodeos were always well attended, but primarily because of big-name musicians he was able to book for concerts surrounding the annual event. Rodeo itself was becoming more of a niche sport thanks in part to the evolution of post-war technology and increases in personal incomes. Die-hard fans wouldn't miss a rodeo, but for many others it became just another of many entertainment options.
By the end of World War II, the servicemen coming back, getting into motorcycles and, other things, and never got the point where people weren't interested in the rodeo. But it was getting, less, I guess dominant would be the word.
Under the guidance of the Ada Elks Lodge, Ken Lance, and scores of other community groups and leaders, the Ada Firemen's Rodeo has continued uninterrupted since 1935, save for a few years off here and there. In 2013, 78 years after its birth, the rodeo returned to the hands of its creators, the Ada Fire Department, who brought it back home.
When Ken Lance passed away and the rodeo kind of started to die back down, at that point's when we picked it back up and moved it back to Ada. I talked to our membership. We decided that we would go ahead and take that challenge. We had a short window, about 2 months, to get ready for it, but we went ahead and took it back under the fire department and had it out at Ken Lance that year as an open rodeo. 2 years ago, we had the open rodeo again, but we moved it back to the Agriplex, the original place that it started. We went ahead and moved it, thought it'd be better for the rodeo, for Ada. It brings people to the community.
Since moving back into town, the now renamed Ada Firefighters Rodeo has increased in attendance each year. Because of the turnout and strong reorganization, the International Pro Rodeo Association has taken notice, adding the event to its tour schedule.
Oh, say, can you see
Last year, after the rodeo, the IPRA came to us and asked if we'd be interested in doing their Southern Region tour finale. With it moving to the IPRA Southern Region, we moved our rodeo to October because all the summertime rodeos counting towards the finals. It's the final stop for those cowboys and cowgirls. We only take the top 10 out of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Kansas to compete.
When you take 10 or 15 cowboys out of your region, or when you take them boys that's in them rodeos and they have to win so much to get there, they're the best crop there is.
As many guys as we can get involved as far as putting up banners, signs, those types of things. And in the days of the rodeo, it's pretty much every member needs to be here. And you know, the guys that are on duty can come and kind of help as much as possible, but still be ready to respond if needed. So our chief allows them to come up and more or less just kind of hang out. If we need something, we use them. If not, they're right there by their truck ready to go.
The proud history of rodeo in Ada has come full circle. With the competitive structure of a national association behind it, the Ada Firefighters Rodeo is primed to write many more exciting chapters in that book. Although times have changed, the spirit of the Old West still lives where the West meets the South, where there's always a place for rodeo.
Back years ago, what we done, we improved it and made it better, and then the people come along, they try to make things better. Well, they sure have.
Everybody's got so many activities they're going to with their kids or this and that. It's tough to draw, and that's why we went to the IPRA finals. We're hoping that that's a bigger draw, a better competition for them to watch, better animals. That word will get out, and hopefully people will be interested and want to come watch. The Agriplex will hold about 3,000 a night, and we'd like to fill it up.